All right, so I came here hoping to be able to take you inside that gate today.
Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. And I say, it's all right.
Hello there. I am near Yongsan Station today, and we've got some nice weather, a little warm. Siri tells me it's 19 degrees. It feels like 25, except when the breeze blows, but I'm okay. And I'm walking through this little area here, this little street, that still looks pretty much the same as it always has, as far as I can remember. A lot of the buildings around here are rather old, and a lot of the restaurants are similar to the kinds of things that have always been here. I'm actually on my way towards Yongsan Station because there's the entrance to the Yongsan Children's Garden. And Yongsan Children's Garden is part of the greater Yongsan Park that's under development. But I wanted to bring you through this way to get there because we've started to come now to where they're starting to develop this area. And actually we passed a place back there. I didn't get a shot of it, but we're in an area now where there are a number of cafes and restaurants and all that stuff. This has kind of become a popular area, although I've never seen it very crowded. And it's been given the name Yongnidan-gil. And Yongnidan comes from a combination of Yongsan and Yongnidan. Yongnidan is it's a Korean military compound over in Itaewon, and the area around Yongnidan used to be just a quiet residential area. Well, maybe not so quiet, but residential. There wasn't really much reason to go over there. A couple of bars, it's down from the Hyatt Hotel. Maybe, I think the Philippines Embassy has been there for several years, but I don't know when they first moved over there. But there's a popular Chinese restaurant, but that was about it. There really wasn't much there. It was just a place where you lived. And Itaewon is divided into two sections. It's split by a hill. And on one side of the hill, you've got Itaewon-il-dong, and that's where all the bars and the restaurants and everything are, Itaewon Station and all that. And Itaewon-il-dong is where Yongnidan was. And so when Itaewon-il-dong started to gentrify, Itaewon-il-dong also started to develop in the 2010s. And you had all these cafes and restaurants, boutique shops, all the typical stuff coming in when that happens. And it became a popular, what they call date course, right? And it was a hot spot for a while. And so now, here near Samgakshi Station and Yongsan Station, this street where I'm on, well, this whole area actually has started to do the same thing, or I should say the same thing is happening here. So they call this Yongnidan-gil, Yongsan Yongnidan. And over in Mangwon-dong by Mangwon Market, there is Yongnidan-gil. So seems to be a theme, yeah. But I haven't been through here a whole lot, and I think this is the first time I've been through here on a Sunday since all of this stuff started going on. And there's definitely more people already than I'm used to seeing when I come through here. But like I said, that area we started in looks pretty much the same as it always had. But this area here is just so different. This used to be just like a neighborhood of villas, basically. Now you've got this big building here.
Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. But little darling, it feels like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. And I say, it's all right. Little darling, the smiles returning to the faces. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right.
I'm standing here outside what used to be Gate 14 of the Yongsan Garrison, which was the headquarters of the United States Forces Korea, 8th U.S. Army, United Nations Command, all this stuff. They had their hospital here, the General Hospital. There's a big hotel. I used to work at the hospital and the hotel. Hospital as a soldier, hotel as a civilian. What happened is the U.S. military relocated out of Seoul. They moved south to a base down in a town called Pyeongtaek, Camp Humphreys. It's been there for a long time, and they expanded it to move everything down there. And this was something that had been in the works for years. You know, they had been talking about it for years, and I guess they came to the U.S. government and the Korean government came to a formal agreement in the early 2000s, and finally it started happening around 2018 or so. But then once it was all completed, the government, Korean government came in and started doing some evaluations of the land, testing the soil for carcinogens and all that stuff, and rehabilitating it and then developing it. So the plan has been to turn everything into a park. You've got right here inside this gate what they're calling the Yongsan Children's Garden. And then just beyond that, you've got a section of the land that still belongs to the U.S. government. The hotel's still there. And then on the other side of that is where they're developing Yongsan Park. This gate is very close to Yongsan Station. Yongsan Station is just right up at the end of this street. And, well, at the intersection up there, I should say. If you want to get in here, there's a process, because the president, the current Korean president, when he took office, he ended up moving the official presidential office and the presidential residence out of Cheongwade. Cheongwade is what they call the Blue House, and it's off behind Gyeongbok Palace downtown. So just up in this direction, there's a defense ministry headquarters, I guess, the Korean Defense Ministry. And that is basically where they moved the presidential office. And I did not know this until I went into the park, but there's also a little presidential office section back this way on part of what used to be the army base here. And so because of all that, they have some pretty somewhat strict restrictions on getting into the place. So the first thing is you can't just walk in, all right? You have to go to this website, yongsanparkstory.kr, I think it is, and register there. They have a registration form for Korean citizens and a registration form for foreigners. And if, like me, you're a permanent resident, even though in theory you're supposed to be able to do everything a Korean can do except vote for president, then in practice, if you are a permanent resident, you know that's not completely true. And this is one of those cases. So you have to sign up as a foreigner. So when you sign up, Korean citizens have a 6-day window. So if you sign up today as a Korean national, the earliest you can get into the park is 6 days from now. If you're a foreigner, the earliest you can get into the park is 11 days from now. In practice, I think it doesn't matter, because from what I could see, the only days they let you register for online are Sundays. So, you know, it doesn't really matter too much. And once you register, you have to bring your ID card. If you're a foreigner, you have to bring your passport. I brought mine just in case, but they were happy with my ID card. And when you get in, unfortunately, this is something, they had no information about this on the website that I could see. I went through every item on their FAQ list, and I didn't see anywhere anything about cameras. And I really, really hoped I would be able to bring you into the park with me and show you around. But it was not to be. So I got to the gate. They checked the message I got after I registered. They send you an SMS message on your phone. So they checked that message, sent me into the welcome center inside. And in the welcome center, you show your ID card and passport or passport. And then you go through a metal detector, and that's where they took my camera. And they have lockers there where you can store items that you're not allowed to take in. And you can set your own passcode for the locker. It doesn't cost anything. You know, they open the locker for you, put your stuff in, then you can set your passcode and just remember the number and you're good to go. So I had to leave my camera and my microphone in the locker, unfortunately. I was really hoping when I went in there that I'd be able to see the hospital where I worked, but that is just outside of the area of the park. But yeah, it's not accessible. But I did get a glimpse of it. You know, there's a low fence, and I could look right over it and see, you know, what used to be the main entrance, and that was interesting because I can remember standing outside. They've got this big awning there, this concrete cover there, and I remember standing outside there waiting for taxis sometimes. But they've still got some old officers' quarters and, you know, family quarters there outside. I only ever went into one of those while I was still in the Army. One of the nurses who worked in the emergency room with me, she got three medics to go into her quarters on our day off and help her paint the place. And so those buildings are all still standing. You can't go into them. They've got some of them converted to what they call Yongsan Archive, like little mini museums, you know. You can see one lady, for example, who was here as a teenager when her father, who was in the Air Force, was stationed here. She lived in one of these buildings, and they've converted that building to look like it, somewhat like it did when she lived there. And they've got a little video playing inside that you can watch in her old bedroom of when she came back to see what they had done with it. And right across from that, they've got another little building where they talk about a little bit about the history of the USA, which is the 8th U.S. Army bar. And this was a big thing before I got here. This is like the 50s and 60s that they're talking about, when they used to have all these Korean singers come in and perform. And, you know, I had heard of some of these singers before, Patty Kim and the Kim sisters, but that was all before my time. And then they give you a little bit of the history of Yongsan Garrison, and they have a model, I should say, of Main Post, South Post, and Camp Coiner and Camp Kim. And near the Welcome Center, there's another little introduction to the history of the area, and it's all pretty cool. But mostly it was disorienting. I just I couldn't position myself. I didn't know where I was in relation to where I used to be, you know. So I was hoping for, you know, to be able to catch a little more nostalgia from there, but that's not what happened. So I can tell you, if you're former U.S. military and you spend any time on Yongsan, then the Yongsan Children's Garden isn't going to do too much for you in terms of memories. But unless maybe you lived in one of the quarters there outside the hospital on this side of the base. But most of it is just a huge field. They've torn down a lot of buildings, and they've got gardens you can walk through. There's baseball field for kids. They had some baseball teams going in uniform, kids teams over there. There's a little water park for kids. I mean, it's a children's garden, they call it. So yeah, it's all oriented for kids. So if you got a family, got some young kids, yeah, sure, this is a great place to spend time if you don't mind going through the process of making the reservations. So yeah, it's cool that they've turned this over to Korean citizens again. During the Joseon dynasty, this land was used sometimes by the military, but the Japanese established the base here during their colonization of Korea between 1910 and 1945. So this was their military headquarters in Korea. And they used this as a forward base for their invasion of China. So after 1945, the US, I guess, used it during their military government, but it became the main, headquarters of US forces after the Korean War. So it's really cool that the Korean citizens are able to go in and check it out after all these years. It's just a little bit annoying that you got to go through all these tight security measures to get into it. But the thing is, once you do register and get in, when you leave, they don't let you back in the same day. All right. Now they check when you go in, they put your name in the system. When you go out, they check your ID again and take your name out of the system as having left, or I should say, mark you as having left. And you can't go back in the same day. But if you do want to go back in the future, you don't have to register through the website anymore. You can register here on site. They've got some QR codes on these banners just outside the gate. And from what I understand, all you got to do is register with the QR code and you can go in the same day if they're allowing people in that day. That's what I understand. This street here, all the development that's been done here, this is Hangang-daero, the Han River Boulevard, leads over to the, the Han River Bridge, Hangang Bridge, and Yongsan Station up that way. And this whole area here just used to be a little row of buildings with all kinds of restaurants and stuff in them. There used to be a lot of good barbecue restaurants, Korean barbecue restaurants here. Galbi, samgyeopsal. I used to love coming over here to eat galbi. One of my favorite restaurants was here. And there were a lot of villas over behind here. It was just residential. And where you see these tower apartments here, that used to be a red light district. But yeah, this whole end of the street here has just turned into these massive buildings, office buildings and tower apartments. And there's even some new development going on right here in front of me. But where these apartments are, this used to be a little market. There used to be a market right there where those apartments are, and it was looked like a little shanty town, yeah? I mean, you had the villas here, which weren't bad, but then you had this little market, and these buildings were all old. They were like little 1- and 2-story buildings. They had all kinds of like aluminum awnings jutting out over the shops, or just tarps, lots of tarps, and rope all over the place, wiring just crisscrossing everywhere. It looked like a fire hazard. But yeah, I used to walk through there a lot because my last few months in the Army, 2 of my last few months in the Army, I lived in a little, I didn't live there. I stayed in a little hotel because I wanted to stay off base. Wasn't supposed to. I had, my barracks, but for 2 months I rented a hotel room just down the street here near the bridge. And every evening, I worked the night shift. I worked in the emergency room from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., 3 days on, 3 days off. So I would walk from the little motel through that market, through the villas, through the little playground by the gate, because the playground used to be there, the one I was filming at earlier. It used to be there, but it was a lot smaller. And through the gate. And then I'd walk back the same way in the evening, and none of what I knew back then in this area is here. It's all gone, every single bit of it.
Well, we come up from the gutter that runs side of the tracks. come up from the gutter, wrong side of the tracks. You know the music brought us out, babe, and we ain't never been back. 'Cause we went city to city, all around the world. Yes, we went city to city, all around the world. You know it never looked like enough, honey, even after 30 years. 'Cause we come blazing like a shooting star, and we light you up real good. We come blazing like a shooting star, and we light you up real good. We're gonna hit you like a flash of lightning, just like a bad boy would. Make your name.
All right, so I wandered around a little bit and finally settled on something. And man, I'm starving by now. I've already gotten almost 11,000 steps today, just getting to and around the park. So this is what I've got to eat today. So this is gyutong. That's the Korean word for it. The Japanese word, I guess, is similar, but I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. This is a Japanese dish. It's basically just beef and, I guess, rice. And it's got ginger, which I really love. I love ginger, and I love having gyutong with ginger, and it's such a good combination. It tastes really good. So this is one of the things I like to eat, and I haven't had it in a long, long time. And I got a side of naeng maemil. Naeng is iced or frozen, and maemil is a buckwheat noodle. And you can find a lot of maemil at Japanese restaurants in Korea. So my wife loves this actually. And wow, look at that egg. Yeah. This is looking good. Beef and onions and ginger and egg. So I am going to eat this. And, well, I guess I'll give it a taste while you're here. Doesn't that look good? All right, it looks good. It tastes even better. That's some pretty good gyutong. Today I have showed you Yongnidan and a little bit of Yongsan Station. And I'm really sorry that I couldn't show you inside the park there. I really, really wanted to. So I don't know if I'm going to go back into the park. I don't see a reason to. I've seen what it is, and yeah, I don't see any reason for me to go back in. But anyway, thank you for coming with me today. Thank you for liking and subscribing. And I will see you next time when I'm pretty sure I'm going to be exploring northeastern Seoul, looking for some of the old little mom and pop hole in the wall restaurants like I did in Yongnidan-gil. So until then, take care. Bye-bye.